Hello and welcome to TheAIbumMan, and today we're going to be doing CDs I bought recently for what an awful lot of months. I think this is going to be for like March, April, May and June actually, because basically I just didn't really get time through those months to make the CDs and vinyl I bought recently videos, so that's why I haven't seen one since March with February's. So I'm just going to show the CDs and vinyl that I've got for those few months. So this is going to be a very long one. I'll try and keep it down as much as I can, but do be warned, this is going to be a super long one. So we'll start with the vinyl. First up we have the Black Keys El Camino. And this is obviously a new vinyl, 180 grams I think this is as well. And really pleased to have this on vinyl. This from 2011 was this album? Yeah, it was. This is my favourite album from the Black Keys, the sort of the blues, garage rock bands. And they went to bands I previously liked. When El Camino came out, I really didn't think much of the Black Keys. Even I remember the first time I had Golden on the Ceiling when that was released as a single. I was not impressed in the slightest. I just thought they made very generic, not proper blues music. But I've really got into them in recent years, and this is definitely the best album. Great to have on vinyl. Next we have a really interesting album in my opinion. Bob Dylan's Oh Mercy. Now, I mean, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, of course, and my aim is to eventually have every single Bob Dylan album on vinyl. So I saw this at a car boot. No Mercy was not one that I thought, off the top of my head, was one of his good albums. I thought it was like Knocked Out Loaded and Down the Groove and Under the Red Sky and that type of thing is really bad Bob Dylan albums, but I decided to pick it up because it was a few quid anyway. I've been listening to it today actually quite a bit, and this is fantastic. This is a really good Dylan album. This is probably the best thing he did after Desire, to be honest. I mean, because then he had the Christian period, Slow Train Coming, Saved, and that crap, and as I said, Knocked Out Loaded, and that. Yeah, and I mean, I always thought the Dylan's Renaissance really began with Time Out of Mind in the early 90s, but this in 1989 really seems the beginning of Dylan's Renaissance as an artist. And this album is fantastic. The songs I particularly recommend are Political World and What Good Am I? Next classic, which I'm very happy to have on vinyl, is Derek and the Dominos' Layla. This is one of my favourite blues albums of all time. Easily my favourite Eric Clapton album. Of course it has the titular Layla, which is the best song on the album, to be honest. But it has a lot of other great songs. The epic Key to the Highway on here, which is a classic song. B.B. King has probably done one of the most famous versions of it, and actually Eric Clapton and B.B. King did a collaboration on Riding with the King album. But this version is possibly the best. Other songs that I particularly love are like Any Day, Keep On Growing is fantastic, the version of Little Wing by Hendrix. This album, end to end, is a double album, but such solid blues. Then another Eric Clapton release, we have Fresh Cream, Cream's debut album. And this is particularly cool because this is actually the original UK mono version of Cream's debut. This is not a version you often come across, and definitely one of the rarer versions of any Cream album. And I admit, it is a bit battered and the record is definitely a bit scratched. It's a bit when listening to it. But this was like 2-3 quid, and I could not resist the first pressing mono version of Cream's debut from the time. I mean, that's just so cool, even if it is a little bit crackly, well, quite a bit crackly. It's still awesome. Good album. Not as good as Disraeli Gears, but good album. Genesis Live. There's not many Genesis albums I don't own on vinyl, but even though I did have this on CD, I thought this would be cool to check out on vinyl. And what I particularly love about this album really is just the version of Musical Box. That alone would be wonderful, but the fact that it also has a version of Watch of the Skies, which is wonderful, and to be honest, everything on here. There's basically 5 tracks, and all of them are fantastic. Genesis at their prime, Peter Gabriel. Album I didn't expect to find, but was really happy I did. The Jeff Healey Band's See the Light. This is a wonderful blues album from an extremely gifted guitarist and singer. And Jeff Healey, if you don't know who he was a blind guitarist, and unfortunately he passed away a number of years ago. And he would play guitar on his lap like you would a lap steel guitar, but yet you play electric guitar like that. And you'd think it'd be at a disadvantage playing electric guitar like that. How could you do the bends and the vibrato? I don't know how he did it, but to be honest, he's one of the best guitarists I've ever heard in blues, and to be honest, in just any genre. He's a wonderful guitarist, and this is his classic album. This is his most famous. I think the Angel Eyes was a single from this album. This had a couple of singles to really good quality blues. Well, this album doesn't showcase his guitar playing as much as other albums, particularly live is really when he shines. This album just showcases him as a songwriter, and it's a wonderful album. A live album, Freeze Live. See, I don't actually own any Free, which is quite criminal. I do now, obviously, but I didn't previously, so I thought that was quite bad. So yeah, Free Live, I thought that was a good place to start, and it is. It has classic songs like All Right Now, Fire and Water I've always liked, doesn't seem to sound on the back, yeah it does here, Ride on Pony, that's good, Get Where I Belong, really good, solid blues rock. Nothing more to say than that really. Oh, this was an album that I bought as a mistake. The Damned's Phantasmagoria. I really like The Damned. I think The Damned are a great band. I saw them supporting Motorhead on Motorhead's last tour in the UK, and they were great. Captain Sensible is awesome. And Quicksilver Music was selling a number of Damned records for like a $5 each. And to be honest, I didn't know much about the Damned's discography, so I just went for this one based on the cover. I thought, oh, this is cool. I'm sure this will be good. No, it turns out the Damned weren't just always good old-fashioned punk. No, it turns out they also went into kind of gothy, new romantic type stuff, and this is the first album without Captain Sensible, and it's really gothy, new romantic, and it's far more like The Cure than it is the Sex Pistols. So yeah, I was basically disappointed in this album. I quite honestly hate it. I think it's awful, and in hindsight they had the Damned there, which I now know to be my favourite Damned album. So that was a mistake. Oh well, can't be helped. Sabotage by Black Sabbath. I found this the 40th anniversary, well, at the time of recording this video, of this album, so quite appropriate to be showing it. I think this is one of the underrated gems in Black Sabbath's catalogue. People don't ever talk about this, and while I wouldn't mention this in the same breath as their debut, or Masters of Reality, or Paranoid, or any of the Dio stuff, I think as far as Aussie Sabbath goes, this is an absolute gem of an album. It contains some classics, like, well, particularly Symptom of the Universe and Megalomania. Are just wonderful Black Sabbath songs, really epic, and just, yeah, the classic Tony Iommi Doom. It's great stuff, and while this is not as consistent as those earlier really, you know, classic Sabbath albums, I think this has a really interesting vibe to it. It's not to be overlooked. Going to some prog territory now with Camel's Moon Madness. Oh, I've been meaning to get this album for a long time. I'm a big Camel fan. They're one of my favourite prog bands of all time. Mirage, one of my favourite prog albums. And I've never owned Moon Madness, which is weird, because this is often heralded as one of their best albums, if not their best. And while I still prefer Mirage, this has some just stunning prog songs on it. Song Within a Song, Spirit of the Water, such a lovely song, Airborne, Lunar Sea. To be honest, I could just list off the whole track listing. There really isn't a weak song on this album. This is Camel at their prime. Probably their second best album. I don't know if I prefer this or Snow Goose yet. Maybe I need to listen to this a bit more. I might prefer it to Snow Goose, but that's a tough call. But to us, that just shows the strength of Camel's catalogue. Check this out if you like prog at all. A very underrated album here, the Rolling Stones' Tattoo You. This is certainly not ever considered, well, it's never mentioned in the same breath as Let It Bleed or Exile on Main Street or Sticky Fingers, but I kind of think it should be. Probably a rather controversial thing to say. This is most famous, I suppose, for having the single Start Me Up, which is wonderful, but I just think it's a really solid album. There aren't any other tracks I particularly say, oh yeah, you should definitely check these out, these belong on like the greatest hits or something. Not really, no. I just think end to end, very consistent Rolling Stones. I'm not a massive Rolling Stones fan, I will admit. I do enjoy their music and I do like a lot of their work, but it's certainly not one of my favourite bands, and they're not even close to one of my favourites. But a band I have a lot of respect for and a band I definitely do enjoy. This seems a pretty good album to me. Oh, I found one of my absolute grails for £1 in local record shop, Quicksilver Music, and I was so happy to find this. Marillion's Market Square Heroes EP. This is the first EP I believe that Marillion ever released, and it's been one of the things on vinyl I've wanted the absolute most, honestly, since I started collecting vinyl. I've been waiting for so long. I've held off from listening to the Grendel since I heard it first quite a long time ago, but in the last few years I haven't listened to the Grendel once because I've been waiting till I finally find this, because often when I see it, it's quite expensive because it's a a fairly rare Marillion vinyl. It's not super rare, but for them it's far less common clutching at straws of misplaced childhood. And this of course has Market Square Heroes, Three Birds Down from the Candy, and Grendel. Grendel's the reason I wanted this, and I know a lot of people don't like Grendel. They see it as 17 minutes of utter Peter Gabriel Genesis worship and let's try and copy Supper's Ready type stuff, but I don't really mind because I love Peter Gabriel Genesis, I love Supper's Ready, I love Fish's voice and Fish's lyrics and Steve Rothery's guitar playing. So to be honest, Steve Rothery and Fish doing a Genesis-like epic doesn't sound too bad to me, and it's wonderful. This is an awesome EP, and so happy to have it. Another kind of proggy album I picked up was It Bites, The Big Land and the Windmill. I like It Bites a lot, but not this era, and this is probably the most famous era with Francis Dunnery. I actually prefer the era when he isn't in the band and when he's been replaced by John Mitchell on the last two albums, Map of the Past and I think The Tall Ships. They're easily my two favourite It Bites albums, I suppose just because I love John Mitchell's sound. I love his work with Arena, Kino as well is pretty good, and Star Frost. He does a lot of stuff, John Mitchell. And this album I definitely like. As I said, I don't like it as much as the more modern It Bites, but All in Red is a classic which It Bites still play live, the title track's great, and of course Calling All the Heroes, which is probably the best song from this era, and probably the most famous as well. Still a cool find. Picked up a classic album here which I really didn't think I liked, and I would like, and I decided to take a risk on it. I was really surprised. The Talking Heads Remain in Light. I'd never actually listened to a Talking Heads album before this. They've been a band who've been on my radar for a long time, and I've been meaning to check out. Just never got round to it, I suppose. But when I saw this for a decent price, it was like, yeah, I'm just gonna actually go for it. And I'm so pleased I did, because this album is so fantastic. Particularly Once in a Lifetime, it's fairly obvious, but Born Under Punches in particular was the song that really gripped me from this album. Or it's definitely not my usual type of thing. I found this so interesting what David Byrne and Brian Eno were able to create on this. Just so interesting, so unique, really great album. One I haven't actually listened to yet, so I can't say too much about, is Colosseum 2, Electric Savage. Weird album cover, yes. The reason I bought this was because, well, it says on the cover, featuring Gary Moore, Don Airey, John Mole and John Heisman. I don't know who John Mole and John Heisman are, but I certainly know who Gary Moore and Don Airey are, and in particular anything with Gary Moore on vinyl, I'm buying it. So I don't know much about this. I assume kind of supergroup, but this seemed to be recorded in the late 70s, and I really don't know anything about this band, but I'm sure it'll be interesting if that's Gary Moore. Good, another bit of prog here with Focus Free. Focus, a wonderful band. This is nice gatefold as well, which is always cool. Probably the best song from here is the Sylvia, to be honest. That's probably the most famous from here. And they also, Focus still to this day often play our Focus Free and Answers, Questions, Questions, Answers. Yeah, definitely those and Sylvia are the best on the album, and I think those also feature on Live at the Rainbow, which is easily my favourite Focus album. If you want to get into Focus, maybe you've heard Hocus Pocus around and want to see what more Jan Akkerman and Fij van Leer have up their sleeve, definitely check out Live at the Rainbow. I wouldn't start with this, and I'd definitely start with Moving Waves if you want to go for studio albums. Before a Focus fan like me, who's seen them live before and likes a lot of their catalogue, this is a good album, definitely a good album. Relics by Pink Floyd. I don't have much Pink Floyd on vinyl. In fact, I have this and Wish You Were Here. Actually, no, I have Medal as well on vinyl. But yeah, this was super cheap and I couldn't resist, even though I do own quite a few of the songs. Basically, it's like, if you don't know what this is like B-sides and rarities, and this was released in 1967, I kind of want to say. But no, that's ridiculous. What am I on about? 1967? No. Because most of the songs haven't been made by 1967. That was dumb. No, this was released in the early 70s even. I think this was released before Medal. I would say before Medal, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, definitely not 1967. Bloody hell. Anyway, what songs this does have is quite a few from 1967, and early Syd Barrett stuff like Arnold Lane, See Emily Play, Paintbox, which were just kind of singles released and you can't get on vinyl any other way, and the only other way you can actually get them at all, like on CD, is with the Pipe with the Gates of Dawn deluxe version, which I happen to have here, which has both mono mix, stereo mix, and bonus tracks, including Apples and Oranges, which isn't on here, which really is a shame because Apples and Oranges is one of my favourite. But this does have Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and Julia Dream, which I don't know of any other way of actually obtaining these songs aside from Relics. And it also has a couple of songs that were released on albums, but just so cool to have on vinyl until I get those, like the Nile song, which I will talk about the Nile song as much as I can. I've talked about it quite a bit on this channel, but I freaking love it. It's from the soundtrack to the film More, probably the most underrated Pink Floyd song of all time. It is heavy as hell. Honestly, one of the first metal songs was recorded in 1969. For 1969, only songs like Helter Skelter by the Beatles could come anywhere close to the heaviness that Pink Floyd create. Don't associate them with heaviness, but now song is, and I like Relics. I think it's interesting. Then two that go together very well are Queen's A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races. Weirdly, even though I've been a Queen fan for honestly as long as I can remember, Queen are one of the bands I've liked the longest. I've never really owned these two albums, and I've never listened to them in their entirety until now, which is a crying shame, because they're both fantastic. I mean, you take Night at the Opera, and this has Bohemian Rhapsody, You're My Best Friend, Death on Two Legs, I'm in Love with My Car, which is always a fun song, the Prophet song. It's so good, so freaking good. One of their best albums, easily. And then A Day at the Races, what does that particular have? Somebody's to Love, that's really good. Tie Your Mouth Down, one of Queen's best ever songs. You Take My Breath Away, both good albums. Definitely this one's my favourite of the two. Both amazing albums. Queen at their prime before they became super poppy and super commercial. And okay, I've decided I'm going to split this into two parts because this is already like 19 minutes long and it would be a bit ridiculous. So this is the vinyl section of it, and the next will cover the CDs. So see you soon, and long live rock and roll.